This week's Parsha is Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim starts with the laws of slavery. The laws regarding one Jew who is a servant to another Jew. How does this occur? How does a person become a servant to another Jew? The way it occurs is that if a person robs another and does not have the sufficient funds to pay back what he stole, he can be sold as a servant, as a slave to another Jew to pay back his debt. And the Torah says that the length of that slavery, that subjugation, can only be for the period of 6 years at the maximum. During Shemitah, the 6th year, the slave goes free if he wishes to go free. If not, then he can go through a whole process where he can continue being a slave. This law, surprisingly though, was conveyed to the Jewish people immediately after leaving Egypt. It was one of the first laws God decided to tell the Jewish people even before Mount Sinai. This might seem strange because we just read about Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah in last week's Parsha, but the reason for this is that in the Torah does not work in chronological order. So really this law was conveyed to the Jewish people right upon their exit from Egypt. Why was it so important? And further, why would this law be the first law that God decides to tell us after the Ten Commandments? Seems like a very strange and not necessarily that applicable law. Wouldn't we talk about the laws of damages, the laws of what you have to pay back when you steal, the laws of judges, and so on, like the rest of the Parsha talks about? But we start with the laws of slavery. And in fact, it was one of the first laws the Jewish people knew about, even before Mount Sinai. So the commentators explain that it's very easy for a person to become desensitized to a different person's situation, to say that they deserve it, that it was coming to them, and it was something that they decided to do, and now they should get the consequences and learn their lesson, and therefore be not sympathetic to their situation. So in this case, with the slave, one can imagine that if a person knows that his slave, that his servant, is his servant or slave because he has stolen money from someone else, he would think that he could rationalize, whether consciously or subconsciously, that there's no reason why he should treat him properly. There's no reason why he should seek his early release. He should treat him like a slave and treat him in any way he feels is fit. But the Torah decided that immediately after we ourselves experience slavery, he would tell us the laws of how to treat a slave and how long the slave should remain in his service. Because at that point, since the Jewish people had just experienced what it means to be a slave, it would make that much more of an impression on them how to deal with the slave. Realizing from their own situations the trials and travails of a slave, the pain and the suffering that they went through for so long, they would understand that no matter what he did, it would not be appropriate to treat him in a negative fashion, to treat him in a way that he would feel like a slave. In fact, the laws of slavery dictate that it's not like a slave the way we think about, that you can treat him any way you want and put him in terrible living conditions and food. A person who has a slave actually has to treat him with the same amount of comfort that he himself has. He may not have a pillow if his slave does not have a pillow, and so on and so forth. He can't even put him in a profession that he is not regular in. If he's a cook, he can't make him a janitor. If he's a baker, he can't make him a plumber. He has to treat him with respect, and he has to let him go after 6 years. Quick question on this week's Parsha. In the beginning of the Parsha, we have the words, Ve'ela ha-mishpatim. These are the laws, the civil laws, the laws that we understand. Mishpatim is a very specific category of laws, and what we have to understand is that why would the laws that are understandable, that are readily comprehensible, that are logical to us, Why were those specifically chosen as the laws that God decided to put in the Torah immediately after the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai? Have a good Shabbos.